to interpretation.
Yeah, in this town? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is pride. No, but seriously, so even when I was walking the street,
Yeah.
they're like, hey, you want to show you, want to show you, want to strip club. And it's like, I wonder how many of them are actually, I mean, such great.
Sunday afternoon, there was, or Sunday morning, there was 200
METRA Commuter Rail system in Chicago. We're a large system. We're the third largest system in the United States. We have, next to Metro North and the Long Island Railroad and METRA. We carry 83 million passengers. We got a ridership of 290,000 passengers a week on 11 rail lines. We operate 700 trains. Actually, we operate 700 trains plus 50 dead-end trains.
290,000 a day.
Yes, we got 241 stations system-wide. So that's why we started working with this company that, or I should say, this organization that came to us about sex trafficking because we had an investigation working with the FBI where they were using our trains to transfer the girls, you know, where they needed to go to meet their John or whoever they're meeting, and they get back on the train, the Union Station downtown or whatever, and then they would, you know, go back to a suburb or wherever they were at. So we started looking into it. Come to find out that there's a lot of sex trafficking, especially to children. So I'll get into the organization we work with a little bit later, but the average victim enters, you know, sex trafficking at 11 to 14 years of age, and there's a real. It's interesting because you get more money for the younger ones, which is pretty sad. You know, approximately 8 women and children are bought, so, you know, they're held by the underground sex slave industry. There's a network throughout the United States. So that if, like, let's say, for example, they enter the industry at 14 or what have you, there's like a 7-year lifespan. Usually they contracts on STD, HIV, or they'll get addicted to heroin, or overdose, that sort of thing, or they'll commit suicide because they don't want to deal with it anymore and they can't get away from, you know, the guy that's holding them captive. So, but the biggest risk of people that we found that are at risk are middle class women or females from, you know, families that they either have or either get abused at home. You know, their parents have some type of abuse going on, or, you know, they're being sexually molested at home and they run away. And they end up on the streets, and then they have people that recruit, and they actually, that's how they get them in. And it's really kind of perverted, but these people are, I mean, they're very good at manipulating, you know, their mind. They're young, they're looking, for one, they need a place to stay, they need clothes, they need food. So they get them that way, and then they bring them in and act like, you know, they're going to take care of them, and, you know, they're giving them some money. And then a couple weeks into it, then they start to realize what they got themselves into. By then it's too late. Because then what they do is they threaten to kill their family, they threaten to kill them. I mean, there's so many like scare tactics that they utilize. But, you know, according to the National Runway Switchboard, which I didn't even know that, you know, 1.3 million runaway and homeless kids live across the United States. That a lot of them actually go into, you know, pulled into the sex trafficking situation. And they estimate that 300 children are prostituted every year due to sex trafficking, which is amazing. these are some of the statistics, so it was really interesting pulling these up. So these are reported by state, by the National Human Trafficking Hotline. These are calls that they receive in cases that they you know, that they know about. You would think that, I mean, Florida, I can kind of understand, but, you know, California is like the #1 state that ranks the highest in sex trafficking cases of children. Texas is #2, which I would have thought like Chicago, New York, or, you know, like a bigger city area would be. And then Florida I kind of understand. But, so I was kind of really interested, because if you look at here, Nevada, it is
Is this like a pod or something?
kind of, yeah, it's an underground syndicate. It's a
And
network.
they're all chained together and we
Yeah.
can't, I mean, those numbers to me are staggering, that many kids.
What they do is they ship them.
Tortured, we can't help them.
They'll put them on trains, Amtrak. They use Amtrak a lot because they can't fly. It's interesting because they can't go on a plane because they need identification. The security's tight. You know, I mean, so they use trains as the easiest way to get them from like point A to point B. So there was one. I know that there was one case that they went from, there was FBI was tracking this girl, FBI in Chicago, they were tracking this girl trying to get her. She went from Chicago, they put her on Amtrak to Boston. And there was another network there in Boston that took her. And it's so weird because you think, oh, well, they're on a train, they can just easily walk off and do whatever, find them. But then they threaten them, they say, well, we'll kill your family, your mother, your father, your brother, your sister. So they're fearful that their family's going to get, you know,
Just irritates me.
Yeah.
California, what do you think because of the illegal immigration, the legal?
You know what? No, it has,
Legislative or what is it?
that's some of the reason, but a lot of it is just the homeless, the amount of homeless children within,
Yeah.
you know, with California. I mean, the warmer climates are the homeless, you know, but, yeah, I just, they're staggering, you know.
And that was, what were the numbers again?
For,
How many of these kids are?
300,000 kids a year.
A year or?
Yeah, a year.
Wow. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. They, you know, I mean, somewhere, I read that approximately 5,000 kids die a year because of the sex trafficking. Either due to, you know, HIV, STD overdose or whatever. Suicide, yeah, a lot of it is suicide. You know, a lot of it, I think a lot of it is suicide and overdose, you know, and they take the drugs so they kind of don't feel the pain, you know. You know, it's kind of, it is, it's sad. So, then like I was talking about, so there's no like you're saying, oh, because of the, I mean, there's no like demographic, or there's no like specific group that it's more over than other. I mean, a lot of it are your, you know, middle-class families that are involved. And usually they're targeted by somebody they know or somebody that they know that knows somebody, you know, especially if they're on the street. You know, they'll find somebody. And obviously they're easier to manipulate than adults. You know, they threaten them and, well, first they threaten them and then first they offer them the world. And then, you know, after, you know, 2-3 weeks, then reality sets in and they're by then it's just, they're too late. But the pubescent girls they inject them in like with hormones, so they get puberty. I mean, it's amazing.
Isn't there like 15 to go up with these guys?
There should be. know, the sad thing is, so the FBI knows, I mean, a lot, but because of our laws, it's so screwed up. Because, believe it or not, if, you know, they're, I don't know what their PIP or whatever you want to call it. The guy that's holding them captive, they're programmed, if they get caught by the police, to tell the police that they're 21, they give them their PIP's, you know, number, as their parent or their, you know, brother, cousin, whatever, and it's, I mean, it's really sad. You know, a lot of times they're under lock and key. You know, they don't let them out of the house. If they do, they're, you know, with them at all times. I mean, it's, the only time they let them out, they'll drop them off at the train station. Like for us at METRA, they would drop the girl off at a specific, you know, train station in the suburbs, and they take the train into Union Station, and the girl would, it was a populated area, they would be able to tell if there's cops around or whatever, and they would meet the guy at a certain location at the station. And then the guy would take her, go wherever they're going, his hotel or whatever, and then they would bring her back, and then put her back on a train, and she'd go back to meet her. And, you know, when I first, I'm like talking to the FBI, I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, why did she come back? You know, and you know, the agent said that they threaten their family, you know, their parents, their brothers, sisters, whoever. They threaten to kill them, they'll find them, you know. So it's
So if people say you got a team of 1,000 guys, we're all gonna go out and try to rent one of these girls, and we get them in the car, or whatever, we go, okay, you're safe. We're taking you. And if Benbow follows us, do we have the right to go? One time.
It was self-defense.
100 more to go, I mean.
You know, that's what I would say. I mean, so this is kind of how I got into this. So, a friend of mine who, it's really weird. So a friend of mine who was involved in the organization Reclaim 13, which is, they help, you know, girls who are being sex trafficked, they help get them out of sex trafficking, they have a safe house for them in Chicago, and then they help them rehabilitate, they go to, you know, let them go to school and all that. So this is the video.
Everything else in my life sucks.
Don't you talk to me like that.
I'll talk to you however I want to talk.
That's your brother?
But it doesn't matter.
That's my friend.
I found the love of my life. He's sweet, strong, and charming. I'm so excited.
When people think about sex trafficking, they think that happens internationally, or it happens in Cambodia. It happens in suburban America on a daily basis. It doesn't know race, gender, it has no bias. Trafficking is something that happens regularly.
With different new and emerging technologies, it's making it easier for people to exploit others.
Traffickers are smart. They know that if they come on with brute force most of the time, that kid's not going to sort of attach to them. And so it's much easier to enslave a person if you use more gentle tactics.
Now, if you spend all your time with me, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
People say recruiting, but it's more grabbing somebody emotionally and pulling them in.
In the beginning, no one sees the ugly right away. It's movies, it's date nights, it's dinner, everything is perfect.
But you gotta trust me, okay?
I do trust you.
Little by little, they get them to do this thing, and that thing, and the next thing, that are in furtherance of their ultimate goal. And the ultimate goal being make me money. You are a human being, but I want you to make me money.
And they don't realize money's being exchanged in the shadows. It's not always the person that they meet online. It's not always the person that one would suspect. And that's the problem. Where there's money, bad people follow.
How do we help kids understand this is what it looks like at the beginning, so that ideally kids will be able to say, oh my gosh, that's me, that's how he talks to me. They can understand that this is actually their story in the making, and this is what actually happens a little bit further down the road before it gets to that further down the road.
That's kind of, I mean, it's kind of how they, unfortunately, kind of get them in, but what's interesting is, so when they made the video, so the one gentleman with the red hair, he's from the Illinois State Police. The other gentleman in the dark blue suit, he was from the FBI that we worked with, but they, and then Sandra Ma, who was the Asian woman, she is the one that, she's executive director for Reclaim 13. So her organization has the, like the safe house, it's called Cherish House. And what they do is, once they get these young girls in there, they help, they send them to counseling, they help them be, like, kind of get back into being a young adult, playing and goofing around, and, help complete their education. And it's really, and there's a specialized care for kids who are involved in this, depending upon, like, the recovery is so traumatic at times.
Do you happen to know, are these numbers going down, up, staying the same?
So from what I've read, they're going up. And a lot of it is because of social media.
So nothing's really being done to,
It's getting worse. So in March of 2018, Trump signed into law any website that was involved in, soliciting or allowing people to post, sex ads and, in their, like for sex trafficking and stuff like that. They could go after them, like, that's when Craigslist took down their ads, and a couple other websites, I guess, changed their policies. But, with social media, it's getting, it's almost like they have profiles, and, they put them up there, and, you can have this girl, that girl, and it's really sad. What we've done at METRA is we partnered with Reclaim 13 because they're a local organization, but we kind of got, when we first did this has been out, because nobody really knew about it. It's kind of like, and so we have banners that we put on, or ads that we put on the train. So, like, these are on every car of our train. So it'll do any of these statements. Self-familiarity scares me sometimes. She makes me have sex with other people. So they control my money. And they can text the word reclaim to 21,000, to 21,000, or the 312 number goes directly to the Illinois State Police, and they will actually meet them at the train station and get them off the train and kind of get them into protective custody. So that's the reason why we went with Reclaim 13, and because they work with the FBI, they're working with the Illinois State Police, where they put them in protective custody because a lot of times they're threatened. That's the first thing that they do is they threaten them. So we've already had that I'm aware of 2 calls to that number, which 2 might not be a big number, but it is, considering that, the fear that they put in these young women, and it's not even women, it's young men too, but mainly women, that, the fear that they put into them, at least they're looking for a way out. Because I was actually trying to get this video, or another video that I might be able to pull up, but there's, so this is where we put them, like on our bulkheads here, so if you're sitting down here, you could look up and see it, and they're both on each side. And then if you're sitting upstairs, you could look down and see it. It's just kind of, we wanted it somewhere visible, you know. And it's so funny because when we first put on, we got a lot of complaints from the passengers. My kids are reading that. I'm like, okay, your kids are playing Fortnite and everything else, and Grand Theft Auto too. You know, it's like, what, you know, it's life. You can't shelter them.
The thing is that sometimes now the kids, they want to have their space, and the
Right.
parents, they say, okay, you need your space. That's not for me.
Yeah.
Space, no. I need to be in space to see what you're doing.
Right.
But
Yeah.
unfortunately now, it's not, those are not the cases. They want to be independent, they want to do their own thing, and
Yeah.
that lack of parenting, yes, yes.
Right. I mean,
The parents
every
want
kid
to
has
be,
a cell phone.
the parents wants to be friends, and no, you have to be a parent.
Yeah.
What?
Outside of what my kids are wrong. I mean, they're 18 and 21, but I have boys, but even so, I would watch my kids. I wouldn't let the dog watch them. You know, like my son went away to college. I put a GPS on his car and he didn't know. And it was on there for like a year and a half. And it was in a like a Pelican case under the bumper. Like put it up under there. Well, thanks to the guy Jiffy Lube down in Carbondale, Illinois. My son, he FaceTimes me. He goes, "Hey, I found this box under my truck. Do you know what this is?" And I'm like, "No, I don't know what it is." And he's like, "Oh," he goes, "So you well mind if I throw it away?" I'm like, "No." I'm like, "Hold on, it costs a lot of money." I'm like, he's like, "How long has this been on my truck?" I'm like, "It's about a year and a half." He goes, "I cannot."
The truck that you're paying.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly. But yeah, so I mean, but there's parents that don't want to, you know, be parents.
Yes.
They're trying to do their job.
Yeah,
Yes.
and like a lot of times too, it's parents that maybe, you know, the reason the kids leave the home and just want to run away is because the parents are either fighting all the time, or maybe the father's abusive, you know, and the kids don't want to be part of that. I mean, you don't really know. But, you know, it's really interesting because we have this cement company in Chicago. It's called Ozinga, is their name. It's like the Ozinga family. And the company's huge. And they're on the board of directors for this organization. But it's interesting because everything's hush-hush, like who their board members are, who, you know, everybody is. Just, you know, for the simple fact that they, you know, they just don't want to advertise too much. It's mainly just advertise for the, you know, for the younger girls and stuff. But so what we're doing, in addition to that signage, we trained our police officers. We have a 150-man police force, just, you know, that patrols our service area within METRA. So we trained all of the police to recognize, you know, sex traffickers and kind of look what to look for, you know, with the victim, how they're acting, you know, and then how to respond. And the biggest thing is how to initiate an investigation and handle an investigation, because that's the biggest thing that we found working with the FBI is it is so easy to screw up an investigation where they get off free. And that's like one of the most important things is the investigation, is what I was told. And you have to be like really careful, because what'll happen is if the police arrest the young child or girl, you know, for sex trafficking or whatever, prostitution, they're actually charged. It's the weirdest thing. So they're actually charged, and it goes on their record when
They charge the victim?
yeah, they charge the victim rather than, and that's our laws. I mean, our laws need to change. They charge the victim rather than going after you know, yeah. And, no, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And,
Because they're committed a crime.
yeah.
Maybe that's why they don't go.
Even though they're reinforced, it could, I mean, this is
Right.
stupid.
I know.
How can we change that? Changing the regulations, changing
The law.
the
Yeah. They have to. I mean, it's unbelievable. Like, so we're training, right now, we're in the process of training our conductors and our engineers and ticket agents to like know what to look for, you know. Because they have a lot of, our conductors, especially the ticket agents, they have a lot of personal interaction with you know, the passengers and the public. So there's a lot of things that, you know, a lot of things that they can, and it's almost like they see something, say something, if you see something out of the ordinary or whatever, you know, say something. You have to know what to look for. A lot of people nowadays, they're so focused on their cell phone or themselves, that they don't really take a minute to look around at their surroundings, you know. And you may see somebody that's, you know, troubled, or maybe, you know, got a couple bruises on them, and nobody will be like, oh, I don't want to get involved or whatever. So we're kind of trying to change that within our agency. You know, a lot of it is, the biggest thing so we work with Illinois State Police to put, and the FBI to put the training together. But, you know, like I said, they look at the physical and mental side to be aware of, obviously. And then, you know, how to identify them. And then we have to have like protocols for reporting it, so.
How many of your conductors, engineers, ticket agents, reps call in and report something?
We've actually had, 2 already do it. And now this training is, it was like right out of the box. One guy called, he's like, and it happened to be this guy's wife, except she just looked really young. But the conductor called like right away. It was like, he just went through the training like 2 weeks prior to that. But it's better to be safe than sorry, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, at least they're getting the message, but as far as the number, right now, I don't have those stats. I don't think a lot. I know that 2 people who were stuck in the trade have contacted, you know, the call center.
A 15-year-old girl, alone, confused,
This is how messed
sad,
up a lot of them
addicted, and trafficked on the streets of New York City. She hears sirens in the background, and she knows what that means. It means run. So she and all the other young women out on the track run, but they're not fast enough. The police come, and they chain them all together and take them down to the police station. And she's kind of worried because she's addicted to heroin, and she knows she can't spend that many minutes in the police station, but she goes to the police station, and she goes to a court, and they sentence her to Rikers Island prison. And she's thinking, I have to get out of here. I've heard horror stories, and I don't want to be in Rikers Island prison. So she breaks the programming that the trafficker has drilled into her head, and she says, I'm Barbara Amaya. I'm not 21. I'm 15 years old, and I'm from Fairfax, Virginia. Please help me. Please find my family. I just want to go back home. And they do. They say, we found your family. They're coming to pick you up. She feels a sense of relief. They're coming to pick me up. At the same time, I felt so many other emotions. I was scared. I didn't know what I was going to say. I'd been gone for 3 years. They take me to the room where my parents are going to be waiting. I open the door and I step inside, and it's my trafficker in the room, not my parents. And to this day, I don't know how that happened. Not sure. Do you all remember the feeling that you had when you were in middle school, when you were 12 or 13 years old, in 6th, 7th grade? That feeling of excitement, wanting to belong, but yet being very, very, very vulnerable? That's what traffickers prey upon, vulnerability. Whether it's a 12-year-old runaway or a 35-year-old man trying to find money to feed his family. It's vulnerable populations being preyed upon. That's what it's about. It's not complicated. They know how to keep that vicious cycle going. Supply and demand. It's about supply and demand. That's a photo of me, 12-year-old me. The summer I turned 12, I ran away from my Fairfax, Virginia home. And I want to repeat that. The summer I turned 12, I ran away from home and I went to nearby Washington, D.C. I'd been being abused and nobody would listen to me, so I ran away from home. In DuPont Circle, a young woman approached me and she said she wanted to help me and she understood how I felt. And I went back with her to her apartment and sadly, her trafficker was there. She had been out like recruiting other runaways. Maybe she'd been one herself one day. One day they took me to the corner of 14th and I Streets, not that far from here, in our nation's capital, and they sold me to a trafficker from New York. And I can remember that day like it was yesterday. My memory's pretty messed up from some of the stuff I've been through, but I can remember that day. I remember the money exchanging hands, and I remember him driving me up to New York, and I remember him taking things up a notch, you know, really. He programmed me, and I use that word on purpose, he programmed my young mind. He knew exactly how to create a commodity out of a human being. He knew how to create a trauma bond. I always get asked, why didn't you just leave? How could that be possible? I bonded with the trafficker. He knew how to create that bond. I never had my first dance. I never had my first innocent kiss. I never went to high school because I was 12 years old when I left home. But I did have an 85-year-old man die on top of me when I was 16 years old, being trafficked in New York. I became heavily addicted to heroin. And heroin saved my life. It numbed me to the existence that I was surviving. I don't want to say I was living because I was merely surviving all those years, over a decade, from 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, over a decade. And then one day I escaped New York. You know, I wish I could say it was really that easy, but it wasn't. It was a lot longer than that, but I don't have a lot of time out here, so one day I escaped New York. In 2013, I returned to vacate the criminal records I'd gotten, even though I was a victim. Those are my real criminal records with all my aliases and docket numbers, and they don't just go away, they're still there. The thing that one point I really want to get across here is that in every state in the United States, there are laws that say you can't have sex with a child, and if you do, you're going to jail. But if money's involved, if there's money on the table, that child is criminalized, not the person that tried to rape her. You know, I don't understand that. I never told anybody what happened to me in New York. I had the deep shame. My dog, Scooby, was my best friend. You know, I really can't say that I like the human race too much. I kept everything inside until 2012. I had an epiphany as I watched the news cast in my living room about trafficked teens in my neighborhood of Northern Virginia. And I thought, that's what happened to me. That's the same thing that happened to me, and it's still happening today. Today, I've taken my life back, right? So I've taken my life back. I've advocated for legislation, helped get legislation passed. I have been to the White House, and I have helped get the Safe Harbor bill passed here in Washington, D.C. And I know some of you may be thinking, that would never happen to me, and it certainly wouldn't happen to my family. And I pray that it doesn't. But I'm here to tell you, human trafficking does happen in the United States. It really does. I don't quote statistics because I think they're all over the place, but would it really matter to you if it was 1 billion children exploited or 1? It would still matter, wouldn't it? Do the numbers matter? That child you see out on the street is not, or online today, it's not there by choice. Sometimes what we see is not really what it is at all, you know. I know one person can make a difference because when I speak across the country, I have young victims of human trafficking talking to me and telling me their stories. So I believe we can all make a difference.